relationship problems. These often accompany an abortion. But there is hope. Call 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who has already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Facebook, which has always assessed itself as being a platform, we now know is much more than a platform and much more than just selling ads.
The president's 100% right. There never should have been the appointment of a special counsel.
If Trump forces Mueller out, this is, in fact, an impeachable offense. It is not acceptable.
There was no probable cause at that point to believe that crimes had been committed.
If he sacks Rod Rosenstein or Bob Mueller, I think that really is going to bring this country to the brink of crisis.
The president's absolutely right. This investigation never should have begun.
Thank goodness we have individuals like Senator John McCain, who's a national treasure.
Huh? If the president does go ahead and fire Robert Mueller, we would have people take to the streets. There would be widespread civil unrest. There is no basis to fire him.
Like a cornered animal.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point. And welcome back, let me say, welcome back. Welcome to Focal Point, this brand new edition on the American Family Radio Network. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, and amiable as always.
We're welcoming Kelly back, so it counts.
Yeah, we're welcoming Kelly back. Kelly, good to have you back, Kelly. And and I tell you, I got to admit, I can't believe I've got a story. I got a story about this, about what we talked about yesterday, about the river. And I forgot, what is
Flying rivers.
Flying rivers.
Why can't I remember that? The flying river.
Because they're not real.
Well, I've got a story today. 2 media outlets have picked up that idea. They're calling it atmospheric rivers.
Huh.
So it's already getting into the talking snake media.
I'm more worried about the rain bombs, though.
Yeah. Well, and
that's
basically the analogy they use. This was an atmospheric river. And it brought a rain bomb, and it dropped it on Southern California, so they got to make all of the tens of thousands of people have to evacuate. Those are the hillsides that got burned off by those fires, so they're prone to having slides and stuff like that. But I just saw that phrase, atmospheric river, and I said, oh, come on, give me a break.
Here we go.
Here we go. All right, let's turn our attention to the Word of God. We are in 2 Samuel 24 today for our study. This is a fascinating section of Scripture because we see, I don't know how to put this exactly, but we see how Satan gets access to maneuver us and to seduce us and to pressure us and to tempt us. And often it's because God gives him permission to act in response to our sin. It's one of the ways that God disciplines us for our disobedience is our disobedience gives legal ground to Satan to come in and bother us and to trouble us. That's part of the reason why obedience is important. Obedience keeps that deflector shield that's around us, the hedge that God has built around us, keeps it intact so the enemy cannot get to us. But our disobedience creates an opening in that hedge that Satan will be quick to explore. Then he's got access. He has legal access. Our disobedience has given him legal access to come in and trouble us. And this is what happened in David's day. We're in 2 Samuel 24. We're told, first verse, again, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he, that is the Lord, incited David against them, against his own people. This is the Lord's doing. If you go over to 1 Chronicles 21, you find out that the way this happened is Satan was the one that directly enticed David to sin. But God used Satan to do it. God allowed him to do it. And again, it just wasn't out of the blue. It wasn't just God saying, I'm going to have some fun today or I'm bored. He said, look, my people, and so this is kind of a lesson to us as American citizens. Our disobedience as a people can create problems for our elected leaders. They, in turn, will begin making bad decisions in public policy, and that's how God's discipline winds up coming into the life of a body politic. Now, the way Satan incited David against his own people, and 2 Samuel 24 says the Lord did this because the Lord is sovereign over all this. He accepts responsibility for this. Yeah, it was my decision to allow Satan to incite David to do this against you. I knew it would work. I knew David was weak, that he would fall for this. It was my decision. I accept responsibility, but I did it because I needed to discipline my own people to bring them back to God. So what Satan incited David to do was to take a census of how many valiant warriors he had at his disposal. Now, this was an expression of David's ego. It was just an expression of pride. He wanted to sort of congratulate himself at the size of his army, and it turns out he had 1.3 million men in both Judah and Israel that were ready to go to war. So David pretty proud of that, but even he began to get conscience-stricken when he realized this is all motivated by his own pride, to kind of strut his own stuff and congratulate himself on what a big army he had. Even Joab, if you can believe it, even Joab tried to talk David out of doing this, but David wouldn't be deterred. He had the census completed. It took like 9 months to do it. They had to make a tour of the entire nation. It took 9 months to do it. But David's conscience began to bother him just as soon as the census was completed. Maybe the counsel of Joab began to sink in. It says David's heart struck him after that. You that can happen. You could be tooling around just fine, and all of a sudden something will just stab you right in the heart. Some conscience attack where you realize, I goofed that up. I got to go back and set that right. That's what happened to David. After he numbered the people, David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Notice this is genuine repentance, biblical repentance. I have sinned. David didn't try to sugarcoat it, didn't try to minimize it, didn't try to justify what he did. He said, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. But now, O Lord, please take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have done very foolishly. Take away my iniquity. When David rose in the morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, David's seer, and he said to Gad, look, I've got a message that you need to take to David. And what Gad says to David, look, you got 3 choices in this situation. You got to pick one, David, because the wages of sin is death. If you sow to the flesh, you shall from the flesh reap corruption. Nobody can escape that universal moral principle, and David, you can't escape it either, especially as the king. So you got 3 choices. You can have 3 years of famine. You can experience 3 months of consistent defeat before your military enemies, or you can accept 3 days of pestilence in your land. So take your time, think of what you want, and then I'll go back to God and give him the answer. David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Let us fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercy is great, but let me not fall into the hand of man. So he doesn't want to go up against his enemies and suffer 3 months of constant defeat. So that gave 2 choices. I'm going to put myself in the hand of the Lord. It's either going to be famine or 3 days of pestilence, and God chose famine, or pestilence, and 70,000 men of Israel died because of David's foolishness as a political leader, as a cultural leader, David's ego, and David's pride. Now, at the end, he was able to build an altar on the threshing floor of Araunah, a farmer in the neighborhood. That's where he sacrificed to God, and God forgave him for the sins and stopped this pestilential attack. And that, by the way, was the place where the Holy of Holies was built. That was the place where the altar, the permanent altar to God, was built, a place of sacrifice, a place of forgiveness, and the Holy of Holies was placed in the temple where man could meet with God. Well, let's go to prayer. Lord God, we see in this truth, this story, the grim truth that our disobedience as a nation can give legal ground to Satan to incite our own rulers against us to discipline us. I pray for our nation. We pray together for our nation that we once again will turn to you in humility and obedience so that our civic leaders may be a source of blessing and favor to us. Discipline us, teach us, and forgive us so that you may once again answer our prayer on behalf of our land. I pray in the name of Jesus that in every area in which we exercise authority, whether it's in our homes, our work, our ministries, our communities, or in public policy, that we will be careful to listen to the wise counsel of those around us. Protect us from being so determined to do things our way that we overrule the caution of friends and colleagues. I pray that we will take refuge in your mercy, that you may once again answer prayer on our behalf. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, my name's Brant. You ever make a change and then wonder, why didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what's happening for thousands of people with regard to their health care. They're joining MediShare, and then they're wondering, why didn't I already do this? For most members, it costs less than half what they were paying for their old health plan. There's a huge provider network, too. You can customize your plan, and this is awesome. MediShare members can go online with a doctor 24/7. So if you need a prescription for the flu or something, it's so convenient for you and your family. So yeah, this is one of those why did I wait on this things. And if you don't love your current health plan, you're not stuck with it. You can join MediShare anytime. By the way, to give you an idea, the typical savings for a family, about $500 a month. It just makes so much sense. Check it out. They're super easy to talk to. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
And he has made from one blood every nation of men. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. In the 1994 Holder versus Hall Supreme Court ruling on dividing voting districts by skin color, Justice Clarence Thomas penned these seemingly prophetic words. As a practical political matter, our drive to segregate our political districts by race can only serve to deepen racial tensions by destroying any need for voters or candidates to build bridges between racial groups or form voting coalitions. Justice Thomas warned skin color idolatry in the political system destroys democratic trust and consent. The current strain continues for failure to heed his warning.
Listen to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Central on AFR. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back. Kind of spooky in here. We got a full complement of aides here in the studio helping me with the broadcast. We got Rob as our broadcast engineer. We have Jeff over here as the producer, Kelly as our intern. And what Rob started doing when we would get ready to start a new segment, when the music would start to fade, he'd point at me. It was my cue to start talking. Now all of a sudden I got 3 people pointing at me. It's kind of creepy, actually, if you get right down to it.
Where one's good, 2 more are better.
And yeah, well, and they know my short attention span, so I need all the help I can get.
We have a lot of people out there who would probably be disappointed if you forgot to talk.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that you dread in broadcasting is dead air. You don't want that. Yeah. Let me get to this atmospheric river story just to prove I didn't make that up. You know, and a listener, a guy named Ron, listened to our statesman in Richmond. He's the one that sent this story to me, and then I found another one this morning doing show prep. Brian Fisher is my name, by the way. This is the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio, Focal Point, and the network is American Family Radio Network, and I am your congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent host, as always. Now, here's the story. This is Associated Press now. This is not a press release from Al Gore, Associated Press. Authorities ordered tens of thousands of people to flee their homes as a powerful storm headed toward California, where many communities on Tuesday faced the threat of flooding and destructive debris flows from areas burned by huge wildfires. An atmospheric river, a huge plume of subtropical moisture, took aim at the state's central and southern coast, almost like it has a mind of its own.
Ominous.
Now, while we're on the topic, while we're on the topic of environmentalism, I got some stories I want to burn on that, and I got myself distracted at this topic, so I'm going to go ahead and give you what I got on this issue. Here's a couple stories. Arnold Schwarzennegger is promoting a helicopter ride for a gas-burning joyride from a lucky contestant. So he's going to offer somebody a helicopter ride over L.A. as a part of a fundraiser apparently mindless of the fact that it's a gas-guzzling trip. Remember, he's a guy that is suing. I don't know if you'd heard this. He is suing oil companies for murder. Literally, that's what he's doing. He is suing oil companies for murder. You know, he says that your product kills people, and you produce it anyway. That is murder. I'm going to sue you for it. This is a guy that used to take a private plane every day from his home in Southern California to the governor's mansion in Sacramento. Every day took a ride on a private gas-guzzling airplane, but he's going to sue the companies that made it possible for him to do that for murder. China's first prototype station, Tiangong-1, is going to be crashing back to Earth between March 30 and April 6. Has the highest chance of crashing into cities along a narrow strip around latitudes of 43 degrees north and south. That includes cities like New York, Barcelona, Beijing, Chicago, Istanbul, Rome, and Toronto. Most likely to hit these places because it's traveling parallel to the equator at the most northern and southern points of its orbit. This is an 8.5-ton aircraft, and it's been hurtling toward Earth since they lost control in 2016. So this thing has been taking 2 years to finally run out of juice and start heading toward Earth. So somewhere in that week, last week of March, first week of April, it's going to come crashing to Earth, 8.5 tons.
I like the way they narrowed down the possibilities of where it may come down.
Yeah.
You know, that's like half the Earth.
Right, yeah.
Makes
43 degrees north latitude, some 43 degrees south latitude. Somewhere in there. We got it pretty well pinpointed for you. So go to your window and be on the lookout. Global warming as a topic is getting less and less important. U.S. voters were asked about what they wanted the Democrats to focus on. 31% want them to focus on health care. 15% want them to focus on taking guns away from the American people. 14% of them want to concentrate on making open borders for immigration. 11% actually, voters want them to focus on deficit reduction. But only 6% want them to focus on climate change. 6% of voters, what do you want Democrats to focus on? 6%, said global warming. So it is fading as a topic of interest to the American people. And I think part of that is because they're getting the picture that this whole thing is a big, fat, giant hoax. You know, while we're sitting here warm and toasty, the fourth nor'easter of the month is bringing snow and wind to the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. There's your catastrophic global warming highlight. The fourth nor'easter this month, Winter Storm Toby. I don't know, that bugs me that they're giving names to winter storms. What is up with that?
They just started that in the last couple of years.
I know, it's just kind of a trendy
really?
thing. Yeah, I can see it with kind of hurricanes, but winter storms, I don't know. Anyway, it's the fourth one this month. They're going to have up to 18 inches of snow along the I-95 corridor, so button up. It's and this is the beginning of spring, by the way. You know, so we're already into spring. March 21, this is spring. Spring has sprung. And it's going to be inaugurated on the East Coast by a major coastal storm along the entire I-95 corridor from D.C. to Philly to New York City to Boston, up to 18 inches of snow. So that is the catastrophic global warming update going to ruin everybody's opening day of spring. Now, another thing that's a part of this conversation, we've mentioned it before, and by the way, Erie, Pennsylvania could get 200 inches of snow this winter, speaking of catastrophic global warming. Meteorologist Ari Sarsalari says Erie, Pennsylvania, good shot of getting more than 200 inches of snow. Buffalo has 199.4 so far this year. That's a modern record for U.S. cities with a population of at least 100,000. And again, remember, this is supposed to be the era of global warming. Remember that meteorologist in the UK back in 2000, he said, we got to do something because our kids are not going to ever remember what snow was like. They're not even going to know what snow is like. They have to look it up in Wikipedia to find out what snow is like. And now people are getting buried in the stuff. Now, this is an important story on this topic because it's all a part of this narrative that global warmists are trying to spin that it's catastrophic global warming, that temperatures are spiking, that they're heading toward the stratosphere, that the Earth is going to be consumed, it's going to be combustible, it's going to go up in flames, we're all going to die with it. But research now has indicated that these meteorologists at NASA, well, it's National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, they work pretty closely with NASA, but this is our official meteorological agency, the NOAA, we call it NOAA for short, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. And they have been padding the stats. Let me just read this story from realclimatescience.com. NOAA's U.S. temperature record shows that the U.S. was warmest in the 1930s, and it was. I mean, that was the Dust Bowl. My parents went through that. My dad was a farmer in Oklahoma, and they went through the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma. I mean, grapes of wrath, they knew all about that because that's what they lived. That was the hottest decade in U.S. history, and the U.S. temperature record has generally cooled as CO2 has increased. So in the United States, since the 1930s, overall temperatures have been declining at the same time that CO2 levels have been rising. Now, what is the problem with that if you're a hardcore environmentalist? What's the problem with that? Well, your theory is that rising CO2 causes rising global temperatures, that the cause of global warming, in your fevered imagination, is increasing amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere. But here we have the exact opposite in the actual record. More CO2, lower temperatures. So they got a real problem. This just completely blows their theory completely out of the tub. So what they have been doing, ladies and gentlemen, is they have been manually adjusting the data to make it look like the U.S. is warming. They've gone in there and they have jiggered the numbers. They have tampered with the record. The NOAA data tampering produces a spectacular hockey stick of scientific fraud, which becomes the basis of vast amounts of downstream junk climate science. Pre-2000 temperatures are progressively cooled, so they go back prior to 2000. They go in and they just change the numbers. They put phony numbers in there to make it look like temperatures were cooler then, and post-2000 temperatures are warmed. So they go into the same temperature record and they start raising the temperatures after the year 2000. This has been a particularly spectacular episode of data tampering by NOAA as they introduced nearly 2.5 degrees of fake warming since 1895. Since 1895, they have introduced 2.5 degrees of fake warming. Didn't happen. Never happened. They just made it up. Most of these adjustments, he says, are due to simply making up data. Here's how it works. Every month, a certain percentage of the 1,218 United States Historical Climatology Network stations, these are stations all over the United States, surface of the United States, that have temperatures. They record surface temperatures, and this is collected by NOAA. Now, every month, a certain percentage of those stations fail to report their data. So what does NOAA do? Rather than just leaving those stations out of their equation since they have no data to report, they go in there and estimate it. NOAA estimates the temperature for those stations that don't report their data. And you know how they do it? They use it. They estimate the data, the temperatures, by using a computer model. And you can track this stuff because when there's a missing data, it's marked with an E in the record. Now listen to this. In 1970, about 10% of the data was missing. The number has increased to almost 50%, meaning that almost half of the current adjusted data is fake. The fabricated temperatures have warmed 4 degrees since 1970 relative to the adjusted temperatures that were based on actual station data. So the warming trend in the United States is based on computer models, not actual thermometer data or even adjusted thermometer data. Adjustments being made almost perfectly match atmospheric CO2 levels. Isn't that amazing? Now, the record is being adjusted, so if you track CO2 and it's going up, you look at the temperature record, whoa! Temperatures are going up at exactly the same incline. It's all a hoax, ladies and gentlemen. One big, giant, fat hoax. Be right back. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Today is World Down Syndrome Day, where the millions of our fellow human beings who have Down syndrome are recognized and appreciated. John Franklin Stevens, a young man with Down syndrome, told the UN Human Rights Council that a world without people like him would be a poorer world, a colder world, a less happy world. It was a powerful speech. For the record, Down syndrome is a genetic disorder caused by the presence of all or part of a third copy of chromosome 21. It is typically associated with physical growth delay, characteristic facial features, and mild to moderate intellectual disability. As John Stevens declared to the UN Council, "I am a man with Down syndrome and my life is worth living. See me as a human being, not a birth defect, not a syndrome. I don't need to be eradicated. I don't need to be cured. I need to be loved, valued, educated, and sometimes helped. A life with Down syndrome can be as full and exciting as any other. Let us decide from this day forward to include, not exclude, educate, not isolate, and celebrate, not terminate. Amen." John Stevens pointed out that a Harvard-based study discovered that, quote, people with Down syndrome, their parents, their siblings, and the people close to them are all happier than society at large, end quote. And therefore they generate happiness around the world. When I first began speaking about the pro-life issue, one of the biggest surprises to me was the number of people who came up to me and said, "Thank you for defending special children. They have been such a blessing in our lives. We know so many important things about life we would never have known had God not sent a special child into our lives." More about this tomorrow. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Hi, and welcome to Focal Point, American Family Radio. This is not exactly environmental news. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. This is not, but it's on the top of my stack, so I'm going to go ahead and deal with it now. Derek Irving, this is from Florida. Derek Irving and John Silva were both arrested after attempting to steal from a home and then erase the evidence by starting a fire with a burning pot of ragu sauce. They were caught with their hands in the pasta jar after they used ragu sauce to try and burn down a home that they robbed last week. Now, they stole a flat screen television and an air conditioning wall unit. The man whose home was being burglarized received an alert on his phone from his home security system. And so they attempted to burn a jar of ragu pasta sauce on the stovetop in the home. Did not work. They got busted all the way down. All right, let's see where we're going from here. I want to start right...
Nothing to say there.
Not much need for commentary on that. Yeah. That's from our World's Dumbest Criminals segment. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this Facebook deal because there's a lot of... there's just a lot of misinformation out there, and there's something I want to make very, very clear here. If I can get to my Facebook stack here, that the problem here is not with Cambridge Analytica. If you listen to the media, they are a froth with Cambridge Analytica. They probably broke laws. They probably broke election laws. They stole people's personal data, stole people's personal information, and they used it to help Donald Trump win the election. And worse, their main profiler guy was a Russian dude. So they got the whole Megillah here. They got the Trump campaign because Cambridge Analytica, that was the brainstorm of Steve Bannon. He ran it. There's Robert Mercer money behind it. And so the media has just been, I mean, they cannot talk about anything else. All they can talk about now is that Trump is going to fire Mueller, which is not going to happen. And the other thing they can't stop talking about is this Facebook scandal. Here is a piece on ZeroHedge.com by Leonid Bershidsky, originally posted at Bloomberg.com. Here's what he said. Facebook is being hammered for allowing the data firm Cambridge Analytica to acquire 50 million user profiles in the U.S., which may or may not have been used to help the Trump campaign. Now, people associated with the Trump campaign, so we didn't use any data from Facebook. Nada, zip, bupkis. We used no data from Facebook in the 2016 campaign. But the outrage, Bershidsky goes on to say, misses the target. There's nothing Cambridge Analytica could have done that Facebook itself doesn't offer political clients. In other words, the problem here, if there's a problem, the problem is with Facebook. It's not with Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica just doing things that Facebook invites its users and clients to do. Here in a nutshell is the Cambridge Analytica scandal. In 2014, Alexander Kogan, an academic of Russian origin, they go nuts over that. This guy's Russian. Here you go. Here's your collusion. He was an academic at Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. He built a Facebook app that paid hundreds of thousands of users to take a psychological test. Apart from their test results, the users also shared the data of their Facebook friends with the app. Kogan then sold the resulting database to Cambridge Analytica, which Facebook considers a violation of its policies because they weren't supposed to use the data for commercial purposes. So that's where maybe CA got themselves in a little bit of trouble. It didn't escape keen observers that if the Trump campaign used Facebook user data harvested through an app, listen to this is in boldface in the story, it did no more than Barack Obama's 2012 data-heavy re-election campaign. You take a deep dive into the tech side of the Obama 2012 campaign. There's a woman by the name, or a man by the name of Sasha Issenberg, did a deep dive into this and mentioned how targeted sharing protocols mined an Obama backer's Facebook network in search of friends the campaign wanted to register, mobilize, or persuade. To do this, the protocols would need to use the same feature of the Facebook platform for developers, which was discontinued in 2015, that allowed apps access to a user's friends' profiles with the user's consent, as Facebook invariably points out. So Facebook said, look, you can build an app, and you can ask the people that sign up to use your app, you can ask them for permission to access their friends' data, and we will let you have it. They stopped doing that in 2015, which is another reason to think the Trump campaign probably did not use this Facebook data. But here is the bottom line. The Obama campaign actually asked its active supporters to contact 6 specific friends suggested by the algorithm. So they got some suggestions from the Facebook algorithm. Here are friends you might want to ask this person to contact. So that's what they did. So 600,000 people that signed up for this Obama app, they contacted 5 million other people. And according to the data from the Obama campaign, 20% of the 5 million people actually did something like registering to vote. But it's unlikely that the Trump campaign needed Cambridge Analytica and the data it acquired from Kogan to do this kind of outreach in 2016 because Facebook cut off the Friends functionality for app developers because it wanted to control its own offering to clients interested in micro-targeting. Said, why should we let people like Cambridge Analytica make money out of the stuff that we give them permission to look at? So we're going to take control of that back so that the Trump campaign wouldn't have been able to do it. So anyway, and we've got a couple of sound bites here. Where's the, is that one of those the Maxine Waters? Maxine's R1. Okay, we'll get to Maxine last. Let's go to clips 6 and 7 first. Let me get there in my rundown here. This is Amy Klobuchar. Again, the Democrats now, liberals, they're just a froth. They're in a tizzy over this. There's something monstrous going on with Trump and his campaign and Facebook. Here is Amy Klobuchar on PBS NewsHour. She's a senator from Minnesota.
I think it's really important that we, one, have a hearing about Cambridge Analytica and get the head of Cambridge Analytica there, but also do a hearing focused on the social media heads, because we've heard from their lawyers and their lobbyists. And the second, of course, is this data breach. And I'm tired of hearing it's not a breach.
Not a breach.
You know, it doesn't matter if someone breaks into my apartment with a crowbar or if the manager gives them the keys. If they take stuff out of it, it's still a breach.
And Facebook says that the privacy settings on all these accounts were honored. I mean, what does that tell you about, is it time for regulation to make it tougher on Facebook to protect this information?
Yes, and that's why we want to have this hearing, because these are brilliant companies with brilliant people working at them, and we're tired of hearing, well, hey, it's the internet, and so anything goes. So why not put some rules of the road in place now? They clearly have told us over and over again, hey, trust us, this is our platform, we'll protect you. Well, 50 million Americans can now say, nope, sorry, that didn't work out for me. My private data was given to Trump campaign consultants when I didn't give permission to have that happen.
Okay, so they got Trump in there in the end. That is the bogey in the deal, is this information went to the Trump campaign. No evidence, by the way, that it did, because remember that Friends functionality was shut down by Facebook in 2015. But, you know, she goes back, uses this analogy. If somebody breaks into your apartment with a crowbar and steals your stuff, what's the difference between that and the manager giving you the keys? Well, the difference here is if you give them the keys and invite them to come in and rummage around and take whatever they want, you can't complain. And that's what Facebook did. They gave CA and these other groups, the Obama campaign in 2012, they gave them the keys. They said, come in and grab any data you want. Now realize they didn't care about this when Obama did it in 2012, did they? You never heard a peep about them mining Facebook. You know, 5 million people they accessed through the Facebook app and their friends. 20% of them took some kind of action in the campaign. And notice what John Yang wants to do, this is PBS. What's the solution? It's bigger government. The solution to this is regulation. So that's the solution that big government liberals always have. We just need more government. But again, you know, she's saying this is a data breach. It was not. It's not a data breach. If Facebook goes and say, hey, help yourself to anything we got here, that's not a data breach. And if it was, and you think it is, that's on Facebook, not on the Trump campaign. Now here's Jackie Speier, clip number 7. She is another Democrat. She's on CNN's New Day talking about Cambridge Analytica, and listen to what she pulls into the deal.
Well, I think we really need to find out whether or not in their conversations with Lukoil, which is a Russian oil company, whether or not that was really a pretense to use what is called Russian cutouts, and they were in fact informing Russia and maybe even working with Russia and the Trump campaign. It all comes back to why all these relationships with Russia. We do know in our interview with Cambridge Analytica with Alexander Nix, who is the CEO, that he was attempting to reach out to WikiLeaks. So again, this is no coincidence. These are arrangements that I fear have been made intentionally. And I do worry that Facebook, which has always assessed itself as being a platform, we now know is much more than a platform and much more than just selling ads, that it does collect data, and we as consumers need to be in a position to opt out of them collecting it and using it.
Well, the friends could only use the app if they gave permission for their friends to be contacted. So permission had to be granted by the user. Now, maybe they just did it flippantly, didn't realize what they were doing. But let's play Maxine Waters real quick. Just time to squeeze this in.
The president has put in place an organization that contains the kind of database
Mm-hmm.
that no one has ever seen before in life. That's going to be very, very powerful, and whoever...
In terms of the Organizing for America that he's now shifting to become a 501c4.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. And that database will have information about everything on every individual in ways that it's never been done before, and whoever runs for president on the Democratic ticket have to deal with that. They're going to have to go down with that database and the concerns of those people because they can't get around it. And he's been very smart. I mean, it's very powerful what he's leaving in place.
All right, that's Obama 2012. Nobody complained about that when he was using Facebook.
Announcing 3 new episodes of Ryan DeFrades' Secret Agent. These animated half-hour episodes will entertain children.
That's right!
And teach lessons about joy, patience, and the dangers of selfishness. Ryan DeFrades is a secret agent with a whole lot to learn, and he insists on working alone until he's paired with a very unlikely partner.
Mommy!
Ryan DeFrades' Secret Agent, episodes 4, 5, and 6 from American Family Studios are available now at afastore.net.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
A Moment of Truth with Gary Bryden, Executive Director of the Association of Independent Methodists.
Dr. Gary Cockrell, a good friend of 33 years and a recently retired professor at Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, shared some important truths of the Christian faith. He said, Jesus is not at my beck and call, I am at his. He also said, if you follow a crucified Lord, you too will have to be crucified. Jesus said something similar when he said, he that does not take up his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He that finds his life shall lose it, and he that loses his life for my sake shall find it. Many around the world today already know these truths by experience. The rest of us need to.
The Association of Independent Methodists, like-minded congregations doing together what can't be done separately. Visit aim2020.com.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back. We'll take the calls in this hour, talk about anything that we've talked about over the course of this first hour. We've talked about the Trump campaign, the Facebook, all that brouhaha. You know, the point there being very simply that the Trump campaign is not to blame for any data that was collected, nor is Cambridge Analytica. They were just doing what Facebook invited them and allowed them to do. So Cambridge Analytica is not the problem here. Facebook is the problem, and Trump and the Trump campaign are not the problem because they didn't use any data from Facebook, most likely in 2016. Then we saw the complete hoax that global warming is, and the sad sack business of the media now picking up on Gore's term of flying rivers. What a crock that is. But it's being picked up now. Number to call. Give us a call, 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number. 888-589-8840. Give us a call, and we'll talk about anything that's been in the program this first hour. Now, White Reserve, we're going to play the Mad Max scene clip again because this is very telling. This is Maxine Waters back in the day talking about the database that President Obama had gathered. It was the world's greatest database, the world's most magnificent, stupendous, incredible database. Nobody's ever put together a database like this anywhere in the history of the world at any time. How did he do it? He used Facebook. Why? Because Facebook let him do it. In fact, I got a story in here from a Facebook individual indicating that they were working with the Obama campaign. They were proud of that. They were on our side. Former Obama campaign official is claiming that Facebook knowingly allowed them to mine massive amounts of Facebook data, more than they would have allowed someone else to do because they were supportive of the campaign. This is from Carol Davidson, who was the former director of integration and media analytics for Obama for America. She said the 2012 campaign led Facebook to suck out the whole social graph in order to target potential voters. They would then use that data to do things like append their email list. So they allowed them, Facebook allowed the Obama campaign to suck data from Facebook, gave them permission to do that they gave to nobody else. That's where Obama got that humongous world's greatest database that Maxine Waters is bragging about. You know, we wondered at the time, well, what is she talking about? Where are they getting that? Well, now we know it all came from Facebook. It came from Facebook. We were on their side. Facebook was on the side of Obama. That's what this Carol Davidson says. They let us do it because they were on our side. So they were deliberately out there. Facebook was trying to help the Obama campaign by giving them as much information on users of Facebook as they could possibly do. Now, Facebook yesterday, I haven't heard how it went, but they held a crisis meeting yesterday. I mean, their stock is going into the tank. It's down $37 billion just in the last 2 days over this scandal. And they're holding a crisis meeting without Mark Zuckerberg. He's not going to be there. So they're going to try to figure out what they're going to do about this, how to staunch the bleeding. So again, this is stuff that the media did not care about one whit as long as it involved Obama. They were happy about that. Now that it involves Trump, all of a sudden their brows are furrowed. There are lines in their foreheads. They're wringing their hands with anxiety. They're ruining the day that this happened, and so all that. Yeah, but it's interesting because Trump is in trouble for this, or they're trying to make trouble for Trump. Facebook is now the one that's kind of caught in the vice of all this, so we're going to see where all of that goes. 888-589-8840 is the number, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Keith, Lansing, Michigan. Keith, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yeah, I was originally going to talk about the global warming. My first thought, what you just said, the whole thing of Facebook stock tanking, is it's tanking because the whole what-to-do of the what was happening and what was exposed, or the fact that they were helping the Republicans? That's something to think about.
Yeah,
but
well,
my thing about the global warming, I don't know. I'm old enough to remember that back in the 70s, early 70s, they were talking about the big freeze, that we were going to be all covered with icicles and glaciers.
Oh, yeah.
By about this time.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's a cover on Time magazine, one of those major magazines, talking about the Earth just kind of getting consumed in an ice age and all that kind of stuff. That was the raging thing back in the 70s. You're exactly right, Keith, because the global temperatures were dropping as they had been since the 1930s. And again, we're seeing, and this is science again. This isn't hocus pocus. This isn't climate models. The scientists are telling us that we are headed toward what is called a solar minimum. Now, a solar minimum is when the energy that comes from the sun is at a minimum. And what happens when the energy and the heat that is coming from the sun declines? What if the emanations from the sun are declining in power? That means global temperatures are going to decline, and that's what's coming. We could be in, actually, ladies and gentlemen, we actually could be in for a cooling period that could last 30 to 40 years. All right, thanks, Keith. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Doug, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. What's on your mind?
Well, I thought you'd be interested in knowing about the, what were you just calling that, about the minimal sun?
Yeah, solar minimum.
Solar minimum. I'm calling you from a flying snow avalanche, I guess we could call it, in Pennsylvania right now.
Oh, so you're saying it's not a flying river, it's actually a flying avalanche.
Avalanche of snow. We have coming up the East Coast right now.
Well, there you go.
Hey,
See, one up on Al Gore. We got a new term invented by our listener, Doug, a flying avalanche. You hear that term from Al Gore, you know you heard it here first. Anyway, go ahead, Doug.
Hey, Brian, did you hear, I think it was weeks ago, and I forget who was doing the interview, but it was Donald Trump Jr., and they were asking about everything, that they hate about Donald Trump. Well, he said that he's pretty sure if his dad said that oxygen was good, that the Democrats would stop breathing. and he was thinking about telling him to say it. Might be a wise move, huh?
That's funny. Well, you know, and again, it's kind of like this myth about CO2, that CO2 is a pollutant. You hear that everywhere. That's the meme out there. People think that CO2 is a pollutant. CO2 is bad. We can't live without CO2. It is the gas of life. That's where we get, ultimately, that's where we get our oxygen from, because that's what makes plants grow. It's plant food. It's not a pollutant. Plants need CO2 for the photosynthesis process, and they give off oxygen. That's where we get the oxygen that Democrats would stop breathing if Trump told them it was good for them or bad for them or whatever he told them. So anyway, you got myths out there all over the place. All right, Doug, appreciate that. Okay, flying avalanche. Remember, you heard it here first. Let's go to Jenny, Dallas, Texas. Jenny, what's on your mind?
Hello there, Brian.
Hey.
There's somebody over in Russia just laughing, rolling over and laughing at all this media attention. And the real focus should be placed on Snowden. Somebody needs to tweet Trump and say, start talking about all of Snowden's talents to open all those doors and show him how to do it and get in there. And that's the answer for Trump to turn off the hoopla about him and Russia.
Well, you know, and it's certainly silly for them to be so preoccupied with Facebook. Facebook is a private company. Whatever happened with consent. Weren't any laws broken here. Facebook may try to say that Cambridge Analytica broke a law by using an app in a way they weren't supposed to. That's possible. But the point is that Facebook gave permission to the Obama campaign, for instance, to completely trash their data banks. Go in there and get any data they wanted and mine it and suck it out of Facebook and use it any way they wanted. When you got Snowden, and you have Julian Assange, and you have the guy that's now in bars, this Bradley Manning. I mean, those guys were involved in serious breaches of national security, mishandling of top secret information. Hillary Clinton, with the email scandals, she was mishandling classified information, which is a crime, a felony crime. You know, that's a good place for us to be focused rather than on Facebook. The only upside here, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I use it. We use it here for Focal Point. But you know, social media is not an unalloyed good because of the damage it can do to people that use it. They spend too much time on it. The young people especially feel like they're just worthless because all their friends are having these exciting lifestyles, all these exotic parties, and all these beautiful people they're hanging with, and they're, you know, stuck at home on Friday night with mom and dad, and they just think their lives are, and it's Facebook that provides the opportunity for that stuff to kind of happen. So I'm not a big fan of Facebook, but, you know, it's striking to see the Democrats go after Facebook now, hammer and tongs. They've even driven Zuckerberg into hiding. Nobody's seen him since the scandal broke. They're having emergency meetings at Facebook without him to try to figure out what to do about the scandal that they are dealing with. All right, let's go to Joe in Arkansas. Joe, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to make a comment and then have a statement. Have you? First, I'd like to say the Democratic Party. It's funny because almost all the accusations against the Trump administration comes back flying in their face because they're guilty of the same thing, or they're the proprietor thereof. Yeah. And secondly, did you hear the statement that the Hill released about Mueller and the Russian collusion investigation, that he wants to shut it down? And he said because it's biased, and that other politicians and innocent people are falling victim to basically, and I say, a witch hunt, and that's why he wants to shut it down. I don't know. Did you hear about that?
Now, who was it that said that? I know Rand Paul has said we ought to shut it down if there's no collusion. Is that who you're thinking about?
No. Apparently, The Hill this morning. I guess the media outlet, The Hill.
Yeah, but who gave them the quote? Or was the Hill?
Mueller.
Oh, Mueller gave it to him.
Apparently, they said Mueller said it. I read it online. I don't know if it's true.
Mueller
or not,
was saying how to shut it down. Well, we'll check into that on the break. Appreciate the call, Joe. Thank you very much for that. You know, the Democrats get away with these shenanigans because they have the media in their hip pocket. The media covers for them. And then when the Republicans do what they did now, like Cambridge Analytica, they're all over it, and oops, it exposes the Democrats for what they did first. Back after the news. Stay with us. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You can stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team at onenewsnow.com. Our goal is to present the day's news from a biblical perspective. OneNewsNow.com not only features the latest breaking stories from across the U.S. and around the world, but also news of the challenges that Christians face today. Bookmark OneNewsNow.com.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. There's more fallout from a report that President Trump was warned by his national security team not to congratulate Russian President Vladimir Putin on his re-election victory. John Decker has more.
The White House is warning the president's senior staff that there may be consequences for the leak of President Trump's briefing papers. The warning came after several news outlets, including the Washington Post, reported that national security aides had included a warning in the president's briefing papers advising him not to congratulate Russian President Vladimir Putin on his re-election win during a phone call with Putin this week. The president did so anyway. The White House said in an official statement Wednesday, if this story is accurate, that means someone leaked the president's briefing papers. Leaking such information, the statement said, is a fireable offense and likely illegal. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson and current Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen sat side by side at a Senate hearing on election security. More from Rachel Sutherland.
Former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson is defending the Obama administration's response to Russian election meddling in 2016, but he acknowledged to the Senate Intelligence Committee
there could have been additional efforts made, but I'm satisfied that at the time, this was a front burner item for me.
Johnson and current Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen agreed no votes were changed. Nielsen said now that vulnerabilities are known, the election system is a target for nations beyond Russia. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Mississippi's ban on abortion after 15 weeks remains on hold after a federal judge appointed by President Obama issued a temporary restraining order on the bill, signed into law Monday by Governor Phil Bryant. Rob Chambers of AFA Action said legal action was expected.
The owner of the abortion clinic there in Jackson, Mississippi, she was on record as saying that she was going to challenge this bill, even if or even when Governor Bryant signed the bill. So we actually see that she made good on her threat, and the ink was already dry on the complaint before Governor Bryant even signed the bill. I feel quite certain about that.
The 15-week ban is the toughest law of its kind in the nation and will lead to court battles beyond this temporary restraining order. Christian moviegoers flock to the latest offering from a pair of filmmakers with a track record of good films. Steve Jordahl has more.
It's one of the most popular Christian songs of all time.
I can only imagine what it will be like.
And now on the big screen, a movie about the making of the classic.
It's an amazing song.
Just kind of happened. Took about 10 minutes, I guess.
Bart, you didn't write this song in 10 minutes. It took a lifetime.
The story of how a broken relationship between a father and son was healed drew moviegoers by the theater full, coming in third at the box office despite being shown in the fewest theaters among the top 10. It also took in $17 million, well above projections, according to public relations specialist Gary Schneeberger of Roar Public Impact.
Surrounded by your glory, one where my heart feels.
Some projections thought this movie would only make $2 million, and it did almost 8 times more than that. That's crazy.
The movie was directed by John and Andy Erwin, the power duo behind the 2015 hit Woodlawn.
These guys are seen as up-and-comers who, when their name's attached to a project, people know it's going to be quality, and I think that helped almost an unprecedented blowing out of the water of what the industry thought this movie was going to do.
By comparison, I Can Only Imagine out-earned the gay-themed movie Love, Simon by more than $5 million, despite being shown on 800 fewer screens. I'm Steve Jordahl.
And the man suspected of planting 4 bombs in the Texas Capitol this month that killed 2 people and injured 4 others doesn't appear to have left much of a trail on social media. Authorities say Mark Anthony Condit blew himself up in a motel parking lot overnight as a SWAT team approached his SUV. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
This scroll is the title deed to this earth, and through the tribulation that is going to take place on this earth, Jesus Christ is going to once again gain control of the earth that belongs to Him.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Facebook, which has always assessed itself as being a platform, we now know is much more than a platform and much more than just selling ads.
The president's 100% right. There never should have been the appointment of a special counsel.
If Trump forces Mueller out, this is, in fact, an impeachable offense. It is not acceptable.
There was no probable cause at that point to believe that crimes had been committed.
If he sacks Rod Rosenstein or Bob Mueller, I think that really is going to bring this country to the brink of crisis.
The president's absolutely right. This investigation never should have begun.
Thank goodness we have individuals like Senator John McCain, who's a national treasure.
Huh? If the president does go ahead and fire Robert Mueller, we would have people take to the streets. There would be widespread civil unrest. There is no basis to fire him.
Like a cornered animal.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to the second hour of today's edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable as always. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio, and you're listening to American Family Radio Network. Just want to tell you how we're glad we are that you're in the listening audience today. It doesn't matter how you got here. You might be live streaming us right now on Facebook. Remember, we record it. We upload it to the Focal Point Facebook page. You can watch it at your leisure after the program later in the day. It's available about 5 to 10 minutes after the program's over, so you might be watching me delayed on Facebook. You might be watching us live on YouTube. Encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to it, and you'll get a little notification every time we go live. And also, it's available on YouTube after the program is over. You can turn that essentially into a podcast, or you can go get a conventional podcast. You can go to our website, afr.net, hit the talk button, Focal Point Talk, or the AFR Talk button, scroll down, find the podcast button, and you can listen to the program later in the day at your leisure. You might be listening to us on one of our 184 stations that comprise the American Family Radio Network. You might be listening to us audio streaming by going to afr.net. Go there. The talk stream will automatically begin, so you can listen through your computer. You also might be listening to us through the apps we have for the iPhone or the Android. You can listen while you're out doing errands and all that kind of stuff. So we're glad to have you in the conversation, no matter how you happened to get here.
There is no excuse for not being able to hear this or see this program.
Yeah, no more excuses for you not listening to Focal Point. We mentioned on Monday the incredible start to this movie, I Can Only Imagine, made by the Erwin brothers. Debbie and I babysat one of them when we were in grad school in Dallas. Hank and Sheila, their parents, very good friends of ours. And this movie is an independent movie. It cost $7 million to make. It had a $17 million opening weekend, third in the country, despite only playing on 1,629 screens. We got a story about it here on One News Now. I just want to hit some highlights. Christian moviegoers flocked to the latest offering from a pair of filmmakers with a track record of good films, with I Can Only Imagine impressively beating its new age rival at the box office last weekend. The film is based off one of the most popular Christian songs of all time and retells the journey of songwriter Bart Millard, who is played by actor J. Michael Finley, as he forgives his once abusive and alcoholic father, played by Dennis Quaid, after his life is miraculously transformed by a saving faith in Jesus Christ. And now with its immediate success on the big screen, many critics are saying the movie is about the making of the classic. The movie's official trailer captures the significance of the life-changing song turned movie. It's an amazing song, just kind of happened, the trailer explains. Took about 10 minutes, I guess. Bart, you didn't write the song in 10 minutes. It took a lifetime. You know, I had a very good friend who was my worship leader at the church I pastored, best worship leader I've ever been around or ever seen or heard in my life. And he wrote some of our worship music. We had other gifted songwriters on the worship team, but he wrote some of our music, and he said, you know, it's a mistake to call me a songwriter. He said, what I am is a song receiver. These songs just come from God, and I just write them down, and apparently that is what Bart Millard did with this song. It came to him, took about 10 minutes to get down. So, you know, some projections on this film was going to make $2 million. If it made $2 million, they thought that would be miraculous. But it ended up making 8 times that amount on its first weekend. So directed again by John and Andy Erwin, the power duo behind the 2015 hit Woodlawn. Remember, that was a true story. We interviewed their father, Hank Erwin, about the movie Woodlawn when it came out, because Hank, the movie was a story about a high school chaplain of a football team as they were going through the throes of racial integration in Birmingham in the 1960s. So it was quite an amazing story about, or 1970s, I guess, about the a school going through the pressures of racial integration, and Hank Erwin, who's the father of John and Andy, was the high school chaplain. And it tells his story of the way God used him to bring the gospel to the center of the team and all that kind of thing. True story, great story. And that came out in 2015. So anyway, great success here for John and Andy. Kudos to them. This is what John Schneeberger, now who is he? Should have circled his name up here. Anyway, whoever this Schneeberger guy is, I can't find his first name in the article, but apparently he's a guy who knows what he's talking about. These guys are seen as up-and-comers, he insisted. When their names are attached to a project, people know it's going to be quality, and I think that helped almost an unprecedented blowing out of the water of what the industry thought this movie was going to do. And it out-earned the homosexual-themed movie Love, Simon by more than $5 million, even though it was shown on 800 fewer screens.
Wow.
I remember reading an article on Variety, you know, the Hollywood publication that tracks the movie industry. I read an article on Variety on Friday night, and they were talking on Friday night about how this movie was likely, it was on the front page of their website, how this movie was likely to blow out all expectations at the box office, and it certainly did.
By the way, I forgot to tell you, I ran into John Erwin at the NRB.
Oh, yeah.
And he said to say hi. And
okay.
Thanks for letting him stay up past bedtime. He was we were standing in line for pizza, and he just really started naming off people at AFR that he really appreciates. So it was nice to see him.
Well, he was just a little tiny guy when we babysat him. I don't think he was old enough to have a bedtime at that point. We told him when his bedtime was, and he had no choice in the matter. How long is clip R3, Rob?
16 seconds.
Okay, let's play clip R3. This is a lawyer by the name of Nancy Smith. She's on a CNN program called New Day. They're talking about Donald Trump, and of course he's got this issue with the porn actress and his affair with her back in 2006 and all that kind of stuff. They were talking about that and, you know, criticizing evangelicals for still supporting Trump. And here's what she had to say about evangelicals, clip R3.
The people have a right to know about the conduct of their president, especially a president who's loved by white evangelicals. They're his base, who want to tell gay people they can't have rights based on their religion, and their religion prevents women from making private medical decisions.
So that's the criticism. that we as evangelicals, we want to tell people that they can't have rights that are based on their religion, our religion that is, and they want to prevent women from making private medical decisions, talking there about abortion. Well, abortion is not a matter of a woman making a private medical decision. That is the decision of a woman making a decision to deprive another innocent human being of their life. So that's not just a private medical decision. You know, we've said this frequently. I believe that a woman has a right to do whatever she wants with her own body. But she does not have a right to do whatever she wants with somebody else's body, and that includes the body of the baby that she is carrying. And remember, as far as homosexual rights, remember we saw this yesterday, it's zero sum. You give homosexuals special rights, that means rights from Christians are deprived, taken away. Back in 2.
I'm Ryan DeFreitas. I work alone.
1 Million Moms, in association with American Family Studios, introduces Ryan DeFreitas' Secret Agent.
Your mission is to get that sauce.
Each exciting, fun-filled episode teaches children important values, and there's a brief wrap-up at the end that connects the story to a biblical illustration. Ryan DeFreitas' Secret Agent. Order your family's copy today at ryansecretagent.com.
When an abortion-minded woman hears her baby's heartbeat on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
As soon as I heard my daughter's heartbeat, words cannot express that feeling I had.
The Ministry of Preborn provides ultrasounds for pregnancy centers across America for free. Your gift of $140 will cover the cost of 5 ultrasounds. You can save a baby's life right here in America by donating to Preborn. Donate securely at preborn.com. That's preborn.com.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Got a quick story to start this segment. There's a huge problem in the media, both in entertainment shows like the Oscars and the MTV Awards and the Emmys. And there's a huge problem in the world of sports, like on ESPN and football, with politics creeping into their programming. People just don't want it. Here's a poll. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? When I watch live sports or entertainment shows on television, I am trying to get away from politics and do not want to be bombarded with partisan political messages. 75.1% of the people say, get that stuff out of my face.
Landslide.
You know, when I watch the Oscars, they're saying, I want to see movie stars and I want to see clips from movies. I do not want to have some political message crammed down my throat. When I watch the NFL, I just want to see a good, hard-hitting football game. If I want politics, I'll go to CNN after the game's over. I don't need to hear it from you guys out there. 75% of American people just do not want that stuff thrust down their gullets.
The only politics I want in a football game is an argument over a call.
You know, only politics I want in my football game is a rousing rendition of the Star Spangled Banner.
There you go.
Now, you know, another thing that President Trump's gotten a lot of criticism for is calling Vladimir Putin to congratulate him. I don't think I've got a clip on that, do I?
No, but I can find you one real
Okay,
quick.
I came across a clip, but I don't think I added it to the rundown about kind of Trump's strategy with this. Trump's strategy with congratulating Vladimir Putin is Trump is a deal maker. And regardless of what he thinks about Russia's public policy, his view is I'm going to make a deal with this guy. We got to have a decent, cordial, convivial relationship. So I'm going to be nice to the guy. I'm going to call him. It's just politeness to congratulate him on, of course, there's a rigged victory. He got 75% of the vote, almost as rigged as the elections in China. But that made no difference to Trump. He's just being a nice guy. But the media has just excoriated Donald Trump. Doesn't he know who Vladimir Putin is? How can he send a message like this to Vladimir Putin? What is it? What message does that send to the American people about this ruthless dictator in Russia? Well, what the media forgot is that Obama congratulated Putin on his victory in 2012. Obama called the Kremlin to congratulate Putin on winning a third term in 2012. Now, Trump phoned him on Tuesday to congratulate him on winning a fourth term, but this is exactly what Obama did on March 9 of 2012. The Obama White House said in a statement, President Obama called Russian President-elect and Prime Minister Putin to congratulate him on his recent victory in the Russian presidential election. President Obama highlighted achievements in U.S.-Russian relations over the past 3 years with President Medvedev, including cooperation on Afghanistan, the conclusion, ratification, start, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And remember, Obama was the one, he's chatting with Medvedev, and he says, look, you tell Vlad that once I get elected, I will have a lot more flexibility to give you anything you want when it comes to nuclear weapons. Basically, Obama just handing Medvedev and Putin the key to the candy store. All right, so that's just shows the hollowness of the complaints of the left about Trump congratulating Putin.
I've got a little montage of what Trump said, and what McConnell said following it. So it wasn't just the media after Trump on his phone call. It was some of his own Republicans.
All right, let's hear it.
I had a call with President Putin and congratulated him on the victory, his electoral victory. The call had to do also with the fact that we will probably get together in the not-too-distant future so that we can discuss arms, we can discuss the arms race.
When I look at a Russian election, what I see is a lack of credibility. So calling him wouldn't have been high on my list.
So McConnell jumping all over Trump as well. He's got no friends in this deal.
Yeah, Putin was a little surprised that he only won 75% of the votes, and immediately called for an investigation.
Yeah, gonna hunt down the 25% that didn't find their way clear to do it. And by the way, I've got a story I'm going to get to in the next segment about how McConnell has made beaucoup millions of dollars because of his wife's relationship with a China shipping conglomerate. That's where his money came from. Remember, we saw this yesterday. Who were profiling the other day? It was Joe Biden and all the money he made, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that his son made, somewhere between $5 and $25 million, because of a deal with the Chinese government. Remember, if you get the money as a politician, you have to declare that. But if your children get the money, you don't. So that's the new deal. These smart the smart countries, foreign countries like China, they're going to give the good deal to your children. That's how they can get the money to you kind of sideways, and you don't have to report a single solitary thing. And China made McConnell an extremely, extremely rich guy. Well, let's talk a little bit about this Austin bomber. 5 bombs went off. The guy was finally apprehended today. Well, he was apprehended last night. SWAT was closing in on his car, and the guy blew himself up. So he's deceased. I think there were 4 victims, 4 victims.
2 killed, 4 wounded.
Okay, 2 killed and 4 wounded. Kelly, our intern, is going to give us a little bit of update on just some of the facts that are out there. I've asked Kelly to kind of look after this issue for us. So, Kelly, those are the basic facts. He was a 20-something guy. He was responsible for setting off these bombs. He's dead now because he blew himself up in the car as the police were closing in on him. So let's go ahead. Give us some whatever other information, facts that we we need to know.
The real questions still standing right now are motive. They have no idea of clear motive and why he did what he did. And they still don't know if he was acting alone, although that is the direction they're leaning. They believe right now that he was acting alone, but it's not clear. And we have a quote, actually. His family just released a statement about an hour ago in response to everything. So I'll go ahead and read that. They said, I think this was a post on social media, I believe, but I'm not positive. So this is from his family. He says, we are devastated and broken at the news that our family could be involved in such an awful way. We had no idea of the darkness that Mark must have been in. Our family is a normal family in every way. We love, we pray, and we try to inspire and serve others. Right now, our prayers are for those families that have lost loved ones, for those impacted in any way, and for the soul of our Mark. We are grieving and we are in shock. Please respect our privacy as we deal with this terrible, terrible knowledge and try to support each other through this time. So that's really the latest information that we have.
Boy, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be parents. I mean, like most of us are. I mean, we love our kids. We love them deeply. We've done everything we know how to do. This guy was in his 20s. And he made blog posts. Did you come across this, Kelly, about the blog posts he made back in 2012 on issues like same-sex marriage, issues of abortion like that?
Yeah, they say that was an assignment at his Austin Community College, and it was a conservative blog that appears to be written by him, outlining some of his political beliefs. Let me see, against gay marriage, abortion, and sex offender registries.
So, these are values that he probably, I don't know why he was against the sex offender registry. Maybe that was a concern for constitutional protections or civil rights protections. But, the values on the nature and definition of marriage, the value, sanctity of life, probably got those values from his parents. They probably raised him with those values, raised him to believe in God, to trust God. So who knows what happens. The family's saying, look, we were an absolutely normal family. And I guess the point of it here, and I want to say this to parents that maybe you've had a child wander off the reservation. You've done the best you know how to do to raise a child into adulthood and to turn them loose, to spread their wings and fly, make their own way in the world, and they start making bad choices, and you can't help but want to blame yourself and ask yourself, what did we do wrong? What didn't we do enough of? Did we do too much? Reality is, ladies and gentlemen, some children, no matter how they're raised, they've got a will of their own. Satan is active. He prowls around the earth looking for someone to devour, and he can pick off one of our kids, even kids that have been raised right. So don't beat yourself up over that. Pray for them. I'm sure these parents prayed for their son while he was wandering off, and we hope at some place along the road he gave his life to Christ and be able to stand before the Father and claim the blood of Christ. We don't know how that works, but that's certainly what we can hope. We know the thief on the cross. He just slid in right under the wire, came to faith in Christ in the very last minutes of his life. Kelly, anything that jumps out at you that we ought to know about?
No, I think that's most everything that people are aware of at this moment. Just really sad situation.
I do have one little bit of information just added by our very own One News Now that apparently when they saw him on the surveillance, they got the license plate number and tracked it and found a lot of his purchases. He purchased a lot of his bomb-making materials at a Home Depot in the town that he lives. So that's how they narrowed it down.
Yeah. Well, if the left
and that
was
story's up at One News Now. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that.
Left was going to be consistent. They said we got to shut down all Home Depots. Yeah. First thing we got to do is get rid of all guns because guns kill people. Then we got to get rid of Home Depots because Home Depots kill people. So again, it's the tools are just tools. There's no moral component to a gun. It's just a tool. It's how it's used, and it's who uses it and for what purpose. I mean, even nuclear power is neutral from a moral standpoint. It can be used for very good things, to light cities and power submarines and power cities and provide electricity, or it can be used to blow cities up, entire cities up. So again, it's just a tool. It's neutral from a moral standpoint. It's how the use to which it is put. All right, so we'll keep an eye on that Austin thing. It looks like it's pretty settled. The issue is whether he had any accomplices, whether there are any other bombs out there. And Kelly, are they saying anything about whether they think there may be other bombs out there, or they just think it's a possibility?
I don't know if they have a clear lead on this. I know that they are very, they're cautioning every, the whole city. They're making sure people are still aware, still taking caution, not opening any packages if they don't know where they came from. But I don't know if there's any obvious evidence of other bombs out there right now.
Yeah. All right, so everybody out there needs to be careful and watch out for that. And, we need to be in prayer for the family. In fact, I want to do that right now. It's a brief prayer, but I want to pray for the parents in this situation. Let's go to prayer. Father, we pray for the parents of the Syria bomber. We know when they say they're crushed and devastated, we know that that's true. Pray that you'll find a way to comfort them and to reassure them. Keep their eyes fixed on you. Bring them through this storm to a broad and open place. In Jesus' name.
Today, moral relativism and political correctness are assaulting truth. How can the world have hope when believers themselves aren't clear on the authority of the Bible?
The Church of Jesus Christ always faces a tremendous temptation to deviate from the Word of God.
The God who speaks clearly expresses God's intent in giving us His Word and the response that is demanded of those who hear.
Nobody ever encounters God and says, that was boring and irrelevant. When people say that about the Bible, it just says to me they've not encountered the God of the Bible.
Our faith is rooted in history, and consequently we need to use the evidence and never be afraid of it.
The God Who Speaks is a feature-length documentary from the American Family Association, which could bolster your confidence in the Word of God.
Churches really need to see this, really need to understand what the Bible actually is.
Available now at thegodwhospeaks.org.
Hi, this is Abraham Hamilton III, and it excites me beyond measure to hear how God is using American Family Radio. That's why I'm glad to have an opportunity to ask you to partner with us financially during our 3-day share-a-thon starting Tuesday, April 17th.
I'm calling from Campbellsville, Kentucky, and I'm very, very blessed that my employer has our in-house radio station turned on to AFR. It runs throughout our company phone system, so anytime a customer or someone calls into our business, they are also listening to AFR.
God is using American Family Radio to inform, equip, and activate our listeners to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture.
I was thrilled earlier this year to order some of the In God We Trust bracelets, and my husband and I passed those out to several people who ask about them.
Please partner with us during our 3-day share-a-thon beginning Tuesday, April 17th.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. First part of this segment, I want to talk about the Mueller investigation. We couldn't find any evidence that Mueller himself had said it's time to shut down this investigation. But Rand Paul, senator from Kentucky, he's got a good statement about this. I don't always agree with Rand Paul, but this guy's a pretty straight shooter. He's a man of real conviction, and he has reasons for his convictions. You might disagree with his point of view, but you cannot find any fault with his level of conviction, his level of thoughtfulness. He considers issues. He has a principled reason for his point of view. And here's what he had to say about the Mueller investigation, clip R2.
There really is no reason why Mueller should be investigating things other than Russian collusion. If there is no Russian collusion, he should wind up, close his investigation, and let's move on. What I don't like is that they can subpoena all of your records, your business records for the last 20 years, and if you didn't fill one of the forms in correctly with the IRS, all of a sudden you're going to be convicted of something completely unrelated to Russia. So I think it needs to be done with. If there is no Russian collusion, let's close it up and let's move on.
Let's close it up and move on. And his point is that there's just no basis for most of what they're doing now. Now, we've reviewed this before, but I can't say it often enough. the law that provides for a special counsel requires that the Attorney General identify the crime that the special counsel, special and prosecutor, is supposed to prosecute or supposed to investigate. What is the crime that has to be investigated? Well, there was no crime ever identified. Collusion is not a crime anywhere in the code. So that has just released Mueller to go on it's just like a fishing expedition out there just trolling for anything that they can find. And this is what Alan Dershowitz, this is clip number 1. Alan Dershowitz saying the same thing. This guy's a Harvard legal beagle. He's a Democrat, voted for Hillary and all that kind of stuff. So, but he does love the law, and so he's saying the same thing that Rand Paul is saying on this, same thing that we've been saying on this program virtually from day one. Let's listen.
Well, first of all, the President's 100% right. There never should have been the appointment of a special counsel here. There was no probable cause at that point to believe that crimes had been committed. I've seen no evidence to suggest that crimes have been committed by the President. The President's absolutely right. This investigation never should have begun.
Never should have begun. That's exactly right. I mean, it really ought to be shut down just because it never should have started. I mean, I'm trying to think of some kind of analogy. I can't think of exactly of an analogy that if something gets started and it was illegal from Jump Street, then you don't just let it go on and on and on and on. You close it down. I mean, let's say a casino. Casino opens and it doesn't get the proper permits. Well, you don't just let that thing continue to roll on. You go in there and shut the place down. So this is what ought to happen with it. It ought to be shut down by somebody with the legal authority to do it because it's illegal even to exist. So anyway, I don't know who would have the authority to do that. You know, Rod Rosenstein is not going to do it. I think that guy's so intimidated by Mueller, he wouldn't do a single thing that he thought might displease Mueller, because Rosenstein is Mueller's boss, but I will bet everything I've got that Rosenstein looks at Mueller as his boss, because that's how he was used to seeing him and relating to him. All right, let's talk a little bit about the other thing that's been a hysteria item for the left is that Trump is going to fire Mueller. The left is convinced of this. They're obsessed with it. Trump is going to fire Mueller. It's going to be Armageddon. It's going to be World War III. So let's listen just to a sample of people on the left to give you an idea of how obsessed they are with, they're just convinced that Trump's going to fire Mueller. Trump has never said he has any thought about doing that. He's repeatedly denied that he's going to do that, and people know that Trump can turn on a dime, but Trump has never, and I don't think he has any reason to at this point because Mueller is imploding himself in his investigation. So let's begin with an old reliable Bernie Sanders, clip number 2. Here's Bernie Sanders.
Well, you know, we have an unpredictable president who acts often in irrational ways. I hope that McConnell is right, but to my mind, we have got to do everything possible to make it clear that if Trump forces Mueller out, this is, in fact, an impeachable offense. It is not acceptable. And I'm glad to hear that a few Republicans, not Senator McConnell, but some others, have made that same point.
All right, so there's Bernie Sanders weighing in. Here is John Brennan, former CIA director on Morning Joe over at MSNBC. He weighs in.
On the domestic front, if he sacks Rod Rosenstein or Bob Mueller, I think that really is going to bring this country to the brink of crisis. And that's when I think the members of Congress, particularly Republicans in Congress, are going to step up and do what is necessary in order to protect this country. Thank goodness we have individuals like Senator John McCain, who's a national treasure, who will speak up forcefully when he sees that this country is being wronged and when he is very concerned about what Mr. Putin is going to do to take advantage of us. And I do believe that there are individuals within the White House, the national security staff, and also within the Congress that are looking at Mr. Trump, seeing that he's acting more and more like a cornered animal and lashing out in whatever way he can. And who knows what that cornered animal will do once they really see the threat to their survival.
So that last statement there just kind of plays into the idea that Trump is deranged, that he's on the verge of some kind of psychotic break, may have to be hospitalized for his own mental health. So again, this is John Brennan. If he fires Bob Mueller, it will bring this country to the brink of crisis. And so he's counting on Republicans to step up and do what's necessary to protect the country, which in his mind, I think, is and impeachment move. Here's Senator Angus King, clip number 4. Angus King technically is an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats. Let's listen.
The problem is if it does happen and there's nothing in place in the way of legislation, then I don't know what happens. I don't know how we respond. That's why I signed on some time ago, and I think Lindsey Graham is one of the people that sponsored it, a bill that would protect the special counsel with proper safeguards, and that could be in place, and it could be passed this weekend if it was appended to the spending bill. I think you know, with the circumstances that we've seen in the last month, a year and a half, saying that we've got assurances it won't happen doesn't necessarily mean it won't happen. So I think we ought to be prepared.
So ought to be prepared for Trump to fire Bob Mueller. That's Angus King. And here is Democratic Representative Ted Lieu from the state of Hawaii talking to MSNBC's Chris Hayes on his program All In. Clip 5.
If the president does go ahead and fire Robert Mueller, we would have people take to the streets. I believe there would be widespread civil unrest because Americans understand that the rule of law is paramount. I think you're going to have protests and marches and rallies and sit-ins. I believe Americans would not stand for the firing of Robert Mueller. First of all, the president hasn't been able to point to a single thing that Robert Mueller has done wrong. There is no basis to fire him, and he'd had to fire Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein first in order to fire Robert Mueller.
All right, so Ted Lieu going to be rioting in the streets, be civil unrest, it'd be a civil war. So there you have it, country at the brink of a crisis. You know, and all of this, it's just so much, it's so much gas because Trump is not going to do it. He's got no reason to do it. I don't think he's going to do it. He said he's not going to do it. Really has no motivation to do it because Mueller is just imploding all over himself.
Didn't they make the same claims when Gorsuch was approved? They were saying, "Oh, it's going to be civil unrest." I think because they used the filibuster rule.
Oh
in
yeah,
approving
yeah.
They said it's going to be civil unrest and riots in the streets. And
well, that's what they always do is just hyperbole, you know, and try to stir up fear in people and exaggerate and all that kind of stuff, you know. And they do the same thing with global warming. That's the whole idea: is you try to create this irrational fear in people, and then you can get them to do what you want. So if the Democrats can create an irrational fear about what would happen in these circumstances, you can bend people to your will. Now, James Comey back in the day completely bungled a very important, and Bob Mueller bungled an anthrax case. I don't know if you remember this. It goes back to 2001, but there was a guy by the name of Stephen Hatfill, and he got blamed for being responsible for this anthrax scare in Washington, D.C. Now, the Stephen Hatfill was a scientist working for the government, but these anthrax letters, let me make sure I get my scientific facts straight here. Let me get to the point here. Okay, what is this? Wait, here it is. Hatfill is the guy they focused on. But he was a poor choice as a suspect from the very beginning because he's a virologist. He had never handled anthrax, which is a bacterium. So they're going after a guy, trying to convict a guy that's never handled bacteria in his scientific life. And yet that's what anthrax is. Anthrax is. It is a bacterium. So they finally realized that he was the wrong guy, and they finally did get the right guy, a guy by the name of Bruce Edwards Ivins. But meanwhile, Hatfill was prosecuted. He was persecuted. They finally had to give him a settlement of $5.2 million for false conviction, false imprisonment. They had this deal with these dogs that could sense, that could smell people that had been in touch with anthrax. They brought the dogs in, brought them over to Hatfill. The dogs liked him. He liked them, patted them on the head. And so the dogs just liked him. And the handler said, "Oh, yeah, he's handled anthrax. That's clear by the way the animals reacted." You know, they just were wagging their tails and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, Mueller had micromanaged this case and got the wrong guy. Fell in love with his dubious dog evidence and all that kind of stuff. They had to settle for $5.82 million in a settlement. And Ivins, the guy that was guilty, 2008, he committed suicide just as he was on the verge of being arrested. So anyway, that's part of Comey and Mueller's track record. All right, when we come back, I'm going to give you a real brief tutorial on how Mitch McConnell got rich through his wife and connections with China, and then we will take your phone calls. The number to call if you want to join the program is 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call, 888-589-8840. Here's kind of an unfortunate story from a hospital in Miami. You know, remember, Indian nations, this is just a weird thing. I think they never should have done this. I think when you have Indian nations that are on sovereign United States soil, they should have been incorporated into the United States of America. I think this idea of them having separate reservations, I do not think it's a good idea for them. You look at the nature of life on the reservations, I think that's proven, and it's not good for America. Anyway, 2 parents from an Indian reservation were allowed to come into a hospital and kidnap a baby because it had white parents. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Dan Celia from Financial Issues. We as God's people need to be good stewards of all that He has given us. That is so important, and that's what drives me each day as I break down the latest financial numbers and talk to listeners across the country about their use of the money that God has entrusted to them. Join me each morning from 8 to 10 Central and Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock Central Time for Financial Issues right here on American Family Radio.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Sheila from Tennessee attended one of the town hall meetings hosted by Dan Celia. She left thinking about different ways to handle her finances.
Dan Celia spoke a lot about tithing and being faithful to the Lord, and I definitely intend on getting in on this charitable gift annuity, which I've never done, but it sounds so exciting. Listening to him in there, it made me reevaluate my way of spending money, my way of doing, and it shows you that a little bit can go a long way when you place it in the Master's hands. So what we need to do, and what I intend on doing, is taking a little bit and making it be worth much for the Lord.
Find out if a charitable gift annuity from the AFA Foundation is right for you at 800-326-4543, extension 345. That's 800-326-4543, extension 345. Or email foundation@afa.net.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to the last segment of Focal Point. Take your calls in this segment, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Again, just to close the loop on that story about a newborn baby, the parents, one of them is an Indian in this tribe, and her husband is a white guy. He's a white father, got a Miccosukee Indian mother. So Indian mother, white father, child is a newborn. They're in the hospital, and a tribal court. Remember, they're treated as independent, sovereign nations within the perimeters of the United States of America, which I think is just a bad idea in general. Wouldn't be for it under any circumstances. And obviously, this is this kind of circumstances it creates. Now, the wife's mother, the mother's mother, still lives on the reservation. She went to a tribal court and got the tribal court to issue a decree that the tribe could go snatch this baby from the hospital, and so they did. Tribal police went in there. They showed their badges to hospital personnel. They grabbed the baby out of the baby room and just ran off with her, and the parents have not seen the baby ever since. They're just obviously distraught over this. So you got all these kind of legal complications that would be simpler and I think better for the Indians. They just simply, Indian nations, they've been incorporated into the United States of America. Now, very quickly, the number is 888-589-8840. We talked yesterday about how China had made Joe Biden a very rich man. China has also made Mitch McConnell a very rich man. His wife, Elaine Chao, is in a family of the Chao shipping conglomerate, which is a huge shipping conglomerate that's in China. It's based in China. Her family is Chinese. She even worked in this shipping firm for a time. She and Mitch McConnell got married in 1993. Now, by 2004, McConnell and Chao had an average net worth of $3.1 million. Now, that's a decent size, a lot of money. But 10 years later, while working only in government, remember this, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what Elaine Chao made, but they were both working in government. She worked for the Bush administration, so maybe she's pulling down 75 grand a year. He's pulling down 175 grand a year, just give or take. So what are they making? 250 grand a year, maybe more, 300, let's say 300 grand a year. So if they saved every penny of that for 10 years, what would that be? $3 million they would have. Well, their net worth went from $3.1 million to somewhere between $9.2 and $36.5 million. Their net worth could be as high as $36.5 million after doing nothing but working in government. Well, that's the deal. She's got a connection with the shipping firm, and they found a way to shovel a whole ton of money, millions and millions of dollars, to Mitch McConnell, which means this guy is completely compromised. It completely changed his view on China. This is a bribe. We know what Proverbs says about a bribe to change the mind of a lawmaker. Mitch McConnell has been bribed into being a supporter of China and turning a blind eye to what China does, the mischief that China does. Turned a blind eye because he's been bought off by this Chinese shipping conglomerate, of course, run ultimately by the government. So anyway, this is just another example of kind of the cronyism. This is just part of the swamp. I mean, Mitch McConnell, and you wonder why he doesn't care about our issues.
Yeah.
If this guy was dependent on his salary as a senator, my family depends on me doing my job and not getting fired. My family depends on that. And I know that. You know what that does? I mean, I don't have any intention of running off the reservation, but that keeps my mind right. Because I start monkeying around or something like that, I go off the reservation, I lose my job, my family doesn't eat. Mitch McConnell doesn't have to worry about any of that. He doesn't have to care what his bosses, the American people, think. So anyway, just bad news on the Mitch McConnell front. Let's go to the phones, but boy, that sure explains a lot to me. All right, let's go to Jeremy in Searcy, Arkansas. Jeremy, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brian. Long-time listener, first-time caller to you.
Good to have you on board. Thank you.
My thought on the Mueller investigation with the, supposedly the Russian interference into the election, I'm tired of hearing about it. Yeah. Because my thought is this. How many times has the U.S. government done that with other countries' elections and tried, steering it one way or another?
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
we're getting what we deserve in one sense because we've had other investigations or other countries, we've done that to them, so we're getting it ourselves.
Well, and you're right about that. I don't know if you remember back when Netanyahu ran for president last time. Obama was in office, Jeremy, and we covered this in some detail at the time. But President Obama spent loads of money. He spent millions of dollars. I don't know what the exact total was, but it was millions of dollars, and sent people from his campaign to go over to Israel and try to defeat Benjamin Netanyahu. They were American citizens spending American money to meddle in an Israeli election. And the media didn't care about that. They didn't raise any hue and cry about that. But Russia makes an effort to meddle. All of a sudden, it's Armageddon. And so you're right, Jeremy. What goes around comes around, and eventually you fall into a pit that you dug for others, and that may be what happened. All right, Jeremy, good call. Thanks for calling in, and thank you for listening, my man. Let's go to Jim in New Cook, Oklahoma. Is that right, Jim? New Cook, Oklahoma?
Yes, sir. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing fine. How are you? What's on your mind?
I'm good. Hey, I was just this been eating on me a day or two, this Russia election interference.
Uh-huh.
When they talk about them stuffing the boxes over there, and I couldn't help but think, You know, we're stuffing our boxes over here, too, with illegal immigrant votes. And my question to you was, can the president use an executive order and say, hey, if you guys vote illegally in our election, that's going to be a felony, and if you got a felony on your record, you cannot become a citizen of our United States when we pass DACA.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Well, yeah, it sure is, and in fact, that is the law. Well, I don't know if it's the law about immigration. You shouldn't be able to become a citizen if you're not here legally to begin with, and should be able to vote. You shouldn't be able to vote if you're not a citizen, and so that ought to be a crime right there. You vote when you're not a citizen of the United States, that's a crime right there. That's a felony offense right there. So we have all the legal grounds we need to stop these people. But, you know, we have Washington doing the same. They're going with universal voter registration right now, and Washington just passed it. If anybody shows up to get a driver's license, they automatically get registered as voters. Now, I don't know if they've got a similar deal to what California does. California has registered more than 500,000 illegal aliens. They go in, they can get driver's licenses, and California is registering them to vote even though they are illegal aliens, and it would be a crime for them to vote, but California doesn't care. I don't know if Washington cares any more than they do, but you're right, and that's why the Democrats monkey with the whole election machine. This is why they want to flood the country with illegal aliens. They know that they can turn red states blue just by flooding them with illegal aliens and getting them registered to vote. All right, Jim, that's a good call, and we do need some prosecutions there to kind of stem the tide. You get a few prominent prosecutions of people. You get a few deportees. You get a handful of illegal aliens that vote, and you ship them home. That's going to send a message through the entire illegal alien community. All right, James in Dew River, Louisiana. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Thanks for taking my call. First of all, I don't think that these people up there in Washington really want to solve any problem. If they solve these problems, then they wouldn't have any way to spend money or talk trash. So, secondly, this Attorney General could take and go to the Inspector General and lay his cards on the tables and look, this guy's been going for a year on this thing. It doesn't appear to be anything, but I want you to review all the case. And then the IG would look at it and see whether we're going to keep on going with it or stop it. Mm-hmm. That would be a simple way to do it.
Well, and I think, James, that Attorney General Sessions is tasking the Inspector General to do that. I think the Inspector General is going to look into a number of things. The Inspector General is about ready to issue a report, which I think is going to be a blockbuster. The Inspector General, remember, he doesn't have to answer to anybody. Doesn't mean he's not accountable, but nobody tells him what to do. He's a freelancer. He's in there. His job there is to be a watchdog for the Department of Justice, and apparently this guy's pretty good at doing his job. So that's a good suggestion, James, to use the Inspector General. I think Sessions is getting ready to do that, so we'll see what he comes up with. Good call. Thank you for that. Let's grab a call here from Lee in Plano, Texas. Lee, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, what you were telling us about McConnell, it seems to me that ought to be grounds for asking him to step down from his position. Don't you think so?
Well, I mean, when you go from having a net worth of $3.1 million, which somehow you got on a salary of $175,000 a year, I mean, that's even hinky to get to $3 million. And you go from there to maybe $36 million, and that entire decade you've done nothing but draw a government salary, that's hinky. Yeah. Something is bad wrong with that picture. And, yeah, I think that's certainly, and when it's money from China, all the Democrats are just all up in arms about money from Russia and Russian interference. Well, look what China has done. They've got Mitch McConnell eating out of the palm of their hand because they made him rich beyond his wildest imaginations. That's why, it just dawned on me reading this week. That's why Mitch McConnell doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care what we think. He doesn't care what our preferences are. He doesn't care what his own he doesn't need to. He doesn't have to. So that's just kind of a sick, sad thing.
Maybe we should start calling him Mitch McChina from here on out. Yeah.
Let's go to Vicki, Temple, Texas. Vicki, what's on your mind?
Hi, I'm curious to know, and I didn't catch the name. I listen to your program every day, but you had a clip from a woman today who questioned how Christians could support such an immoral president.
Yes,
and then made a clip about women's medical decisions.
Yeah.
First, for the immorality of the president, I haven't seen him do anything of that recently. And when they have to dig back into people's histories of 20 and 30 years ago, I would put that standard up to every person that works in the United States government today.
All right, Vicki. Vicki, I'm terribly sorry. I know you got another great comment to make. We are completely out of time. Thanks for your call. Good comments. Be back tomorrow. I'll be right here.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
There's a lot happening around us. That's why Christians need to stand strong on family values and morality. Hi, I'm Ray Rooney, editor of The Stand, a blog from the American Family Association. The Stand has timely, carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. Visit afa.net/thestand.
Faith, family, freedom.